Star Wars was a defining movie of its generation. Since its inception, George Lucas created new worlds, heroes, aliens, and animatronic droids, all set against the backdrop of a futuristic galaxy in peril. Star Wars was a phenomenon that transcended culture, and to this day, people all over the world still live and breathe Star Wars. So why did such a low-budget film that the studios never believed in become this mega cultural tale of its time? Why is Star Wars still as relevant and popular as it was when it came out in 1977? On this episode, we will journey into the heart of Star Wars, into alien worlds of heroes and villains. We will explore the legacy of Star Wars. Star Wars was conceived and written by an unknown director in Hollywood named George Lucas. He had made a successful film called American Graffiti, and while it showcased the American dream during the 1960s, it wouldn't come close to scratch the surface of what was on the horizon for the future of the world. When George Lucas sat down to write Star Wars, he had many different ideas in his head on what he wanted this film to encompass. First, Lucas was inspired by the 1940s and 50s science fiction pulp magazines that told tales of faraway galaxies, strange creatures, and heroes. Serials such as Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon were really the starting point for George Lucas to create Star Wars, and without the two, Star Wars may never have happened. Lucas wanted to create a landscape of characters that we already know and place them in an environment that was completely new to us. When George Lucas set out to make Star Wars, he carefully constructed a science fiction tale in the vein of Flash Gordon that dealt with themes of mythology, politics, religion, and philosophy. Much like the mythology of Homer's The Odyssey and other Greek heroic tales, Star Wars would embody all of those themes and essentially turn a classic tale into a modern one. Star Wars is a modern mythology for the ages and will for decades become the defining tale of good versus evil, light versus dark. Joseph Campbell, a famous professor and mythologist, wrote a book that dealt with heroes and their journeys, and he called it Hero of a Thousand Faces. This book was studied by college students all around the world, and it is the roadmap for all heroes and stories. George Lucas was inspired by this, and he decided to apply what Campbell called the hero's journey to his Star Wars universe. Star Wars, in the vein of classic mythological tales, follows the journey of two men, Anakin Skywalker and his son Luke. Both men set out on the hero's journey, but both end in a very different place. While Luke follows the path of a traditional hero, it is his father who sets out on a different path, a darker, violent path that leads him ultimately to the dark side. And while both father and son struggle on their journeys, it is Luke's journey that ultimately leads him to redeem his corrupted father.
Your thoughts betray you, Father. I feel the good in you, the conflict.
There is no conflict.
While Anakin's fate is sealed as Darth Vader, Luke's fate is tied to bringing balance to the Force. In saying that, you might be asking yourself, what exactly is the Force? Well, it's never really explained in great detail, but we know a few things about it. There is a scene in Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, where Luke asks Obi-Wan Kenobi what the Force is. He explains it to Luke as if we are Luke himself, people of the unknowing.
The Force?
And the Force is what gives the Jedi his power. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us and penetrates us. It binds the galaxy together.
The Force has become a trope, the main glue that holds the series together. Without the Force, we would not have our characters. Of course, Star Wars is not just merely based on mythology, but the series incorporates many Shakespearean themes as well. The entire dynamic between Luke and Vader is very much Shakespearean, and the big reveal of Darth Vader being Luke's father is the defining moment in the series and pays homage to Hamlet or other Shakespearean tales.
No, I am your father.
Not true. That's impossible.
The fact that Luke Skywalker and his sister, Princess Leia Organa, are kept hidden away in secret from Darth Vader shows that this family dynamic is more than what it seems. If you take the Freudian approach to the family dynamic, Luke has romantic feelings for Leia that come straight from a Shakespearean play or are reminiscent of an old J.R.R. Tolkien tale, The Children of Hurin. Of course, their sexual adventures never exceed a mere kiss, but it is a nice nod to the classic mythological stories where incest was very much a part of Greek culture. Luke is the archetypal hero. He is the everyman. He is us. And even though he is seduced by the dark side on multiple occasions, his strength and his formity as a Jedi Knight show that Luke is the chosen hero who ultimately brings balance to a worn-torn galaxy. What sets Star Wars apart from any other story is the constant incorporation of religion in the universe. George Lucas created these individuals who studied the power of the Force, and he called them Jedi Knights. A Jedi Knight is primarily based off of the old knights of chivalry, from stories like King Arthur to more realistic Templar knights, who have one sole purpose, and that is to protect what is sacred in the world. In this case, Jedi Knights are keepers of the peace. They are skilled with the Force and help political leaders find peace and balance in the galaxy. Jedis are more modern monks who are forbidden to love, and much like priests, they have a series of rituals that they closely follow to becoming more entwined in their knowledge of the Force. Jedi Knights are primarily known for wielding a blade, much like a sword that a knight carries. This particular blade is called a lightsaber. A lightsaber is the weapon of choice of a Jedi Knight, which makes it all the more elegant.
It's your father's lightsaber. This is the weapon of a Jedi Knight. Not as clumsy or random as a blaster. An elegant weapon for a more civilized age. For over 1,000 generations, the Jedi Knights were the guardians of peace and justice in the Old Republic. Before the Dark Times. Before the Empire.
Of course, with the Jedi, a more dangerous threat emerges, and that is the Sith Lords. The Sith Lords are Jedi who have turned to the dark side. They are knowledgeable with the Force, but ultimately dabble in dark arts, magic, and use their power for evil. The Sith Lords are usually the main villains of the Star Wars universe, and there is always a battle between Jedi versus Sith, good versus evil. The Sith also carry lightsabers similar to Jedi's, but what lets the audience know that they are evil is the beam color itself. All Sith carry a red light beam, which signals to the audience that they are a fallen Jedi or a Sith Lord. Colors of lightsabers set the tone for which character is good and which is bad. Blue and green signify life, eternity, and peace, while red represents death, carnage, and violence. Of course, in the Star Wars mythology, there are many Sith Lords, emperors, and apprentices. But the one that will always stand out and will be remembered for generations to come is Darth Vader. He is so much more than your mustache-twirling villain. He is complex with powers of good and evil. Vader's struggle is an epic one, and his ultimate fate and redemption come at the hands of his son Luke. Because Vader is so terrifying, menacing, and evil, he has become a symbol all over the world as the ultimate villain. He is primarily made of machine, twisted, and evil. But what audiences recognize the most about Vader is his voice and his mechanized breathing. People all over the world who may have never seen Star Wars know who Darth Vader is just by his look, and that evil-sounding breathing coming from the depths of his burnt chest from a battle long ago. Vader hinges on both light and good, and even though he took the sacred religion of the Jedi and warped it with his power, his son's faith in him restores any hope that was left in the dark and awakens Vader to becoming a redeemed man. In the realm of religion and politics, another metaphor comes out from Star Wars, and that is the political system that George Lucas created. Right after World War II, America had just overcome the greatest known war in human history. After World War II, we went into the Cold War, and then came the conflict with Vietnam. Americans were tired of war, but at this point we were used to the idea that we lived in a world ravaged by evil political leaders who were hell-bent on world domination, violence, and destruction. In the world of Star Wars, the Galactic Empire is a direct metaphor of Nazi Germany. Germany had its Darth Vader being Hitler, while something else emerged from the ashes of a fallen empire. Nazi soldiers who marched in uniform with their helmets and their guns were referred to as stormtroopers, a name that George Lucas took directly from the history books. The stormtroopers in Star Wars and Vader as their leader are literally a direct interpretation on the World War II era and can be seen as a political commentary on the state of the world. With all of these combined elements of politics, religion, and mythology, George Lucas was recreating an entire universe based on events that happened in the world that we know today. He grounds out his space opera and sets it in reality, with events and archetypes that have existed for thousands of years. If there is something to be learned from the Star Wars universe, it's that even though it's fiction, a mass audience will be able to understand many of the elements in the story, and for film in that time period, it worked really well. The impact that Star Wars has on the world goes way beyond the films. Star Wars has influenced our culture in many ways that not even George Lucas could have ever predicted. Star Wars was the first film, or one of the first films, that pioneered the special effects industry that we utilize in modern films today. It pioneered the green screen special effects, the scale models, the animatronics, and the visual effects companies that exist today. Star Wars pushed the boundaries in terms of storytelling and showed the different things that filmmakers can put on screen. If you go out and watch any modern film today, whether it being The Lord of the Rings, Planet of the Apes, Avatar, Tron, Clash of the Titans, or anything with special effects, they can all thank Star Wars for being the first at testing the sheer infinite limits that technology can have on a film. Of course, it wasn't just the technology that made Star Wars the phenomenon that it is today. Sure, it was a factor, but just one of many. The biggest thing that Star Wars has accomplished in the history of film is the marketing. The way they marketed this film was just on the brink of sheer genius. The number one success that Star Wars has had on culture is its toys. Toys ranging from plastic lightsabers, from action figures to Legos, are just some of the examples of how Star Wars was brought into the homes of millions of people. Now we not only have the toys, but we have the costumes, comic books, video games, board games, t-shirts, and the list goes on and on. There is even Star Wars at Disneyland and a soon-to-be Star Wars land in the Magic Kingdom. Star Wars is all over the place, and that's what makes this franchise so recognizable. It doesn't matter who you are, your background, your marital status, your sexual orientation, age, race, or even religion. People from all different cultures and backgrounds can relate to something from Star Wars, and that is why these series of films are so unique and are so special. Because of the mythology, the rich universe, and archetypal characters that millions can relate to, Star Wars has become timeless. As the Odyssey has lasted for thousands of years, so will Star Wars. It is a mythological story that people will be talking about for many, many years to come. The future of Star Wars has never looked brighter, and the possibilities of storytelling in this universe is infinite. Whether it being an old or a new Star Wars tale, the relatability will always be present. We as humans are storytellers. We are pioneers, and we have always dreamt of what lies beyond our galaxy. And much like Luke Skywalker, we are constantly trying to find our own path, our own destiny, where we fit in amongst the stars, always looking to that lost horizon.